And I think we're good. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Wonderful Monday. I hope everybody had a good weekend. Where we'd last left off, we were deep in the bowels of the Amber Temple, a resting place, a prison, a mausoleum of sorts for ancient evil gods. There are vestiges left imprisoned in amber sarcophagi, once looked over, curated by good aligned wizards who are eventually corrupted by the importance of their task and by the ambient evil psychic energies of the forces within the temple itself. A couple of notes, things I forgot to mention last time. One of them is that it is supposed to be that the interior of the temple is a freezing place, and that like every hour that you are here you have to be making checks against extreme cold or take levels of exhaustion. Which seemed backwards to me from it being, I reversed it so that walking up the frozen mountain pass through the wind and snow did that to you, and resting inside an underground temple was good and not suicidal, because otherwise you would have been going back outside to sleep, which seemed weird and wrong and bad. So, reversed that. Another aspect of something that was going on in the Prime campaign at this time is that for a while now, Shava has been carrying around this tome. She may have even had a pact of this tome. Am I right in thinking that? Yeah?
Yeah.
It has been granting her the ability, when people write their names willingly in this tome, that she can later send to them. She can do a communication over long distance to to ask them questions and let them know and stuff. I was gonna actually check something about sending again really quick.
It's a free sending spell.
Yeah, it's free. Can you just do it like infinitely?
Yeah. No, I can't get reached back to, but it's on my side. It's a free sending spell.
Yeah, which is super cool. And they get a 25-word response whenever you do it to somebody. So it's like basically you could just converse with them. But their sending appears in writing in your tome. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I think mine also is writing. I think I have to write in the.
Yeah, you're writing messages back and forth. So a pretty cool mechanic. Something about sending is it does allow you to communicate with creatures on other planes. And I reread the wording of Strahd's ability to intercept messages. And it says when players use magic that can contact creatures of other planes, such as commune, I thought, well, sending does technically fall into that category, so I didn't even have to make anything up, although I did believe I was doing that at the time. Strahd has, unbeknownst to Shava, been listening in on these sendings. At a certain point, this becomes beknownst to Shava, and she continues to do it. And the main person she is communicating with is Erwin Mardukov, to make sure that everything is okay back in Vallaki. It's somewhere around this period of time, while we're in the Amber Temple, that Erwin Mardukov stops replying to these sendings.
It was actually back, it wasn't in the Amber Temple, it was back when we got grabbed by the snowmaidens in the tower. I messaged them then, and I got Strahd back. And then we got attacked, and I stopped. I think I stopped after that.
I think it was, that was the last time you communicated to Erwin and, like thinking he might get it. And Strahd intercepted that one. And then I think later in the Amber Temple, you tried to send another one to Erwin, and that time received no response.
Nothing.
So, it isn't even in this case that Strahd has intercepted it, but that Erwin is actually on the other end, but incapable of replying. We won't know what's going on there for a while. Jumping back into this moment where we left off in the slides, we have both parties who have just met this Lich Exathanter and have been trying to figure out how they feel about him. For Prime, they're kind of going this way, kind of going that way, kind of weighing their options. For Alpha, we have a couple members of the party who have a history with Liches, really don't like Liches, don't see any reason to be friendly with this guy, and one character who really thinks he's a super neat, funny dude, and maybe would be cool to learn from. But we're not going to, in either party do we take any action on this right away. We're going to let that percolate. I'm going to jump over to a different part of the temple to talk about something, because it's at this point that Alpha starts to hear like a really loud sound, like a boom, boom, boom from somewhere in the temple, and they run to immediately respond to it. In Prime, as in both games, but in Prime, we have these witches in the Amber Temple, and what they've been doing in both campaigns is they've snuck into this temple invisibly, and they've come up to one of the vault doors. They believe there's some kind of powerful magic behind them. They've like found something in the notes of like Strahd or Baba Lysaga that has led them here, and they're trying to figure out how to get in to get at those juicy magic secrets. The vault that they have picked has a hole in the roof that some schmuck drilled in long ago, and we don't know what happened to them any longer. But they're not aware of that, so they're still trying to get in the front door. So Prime discovers them here. The witches fight them. They have their animated brooms, which one might look at these brooms and go, oh, they're like flying brooms. No, these brooms actually specifically don't fly. They just make 3 attacks that don't really do a lot of damage, but they smack you very aggressively. So we bust up some witches, we bust up some brooms. We end up with one witch still alive with her broom who surrenders and gives them some information and then runs off into the temple. And we will only see her a little bit later on. She's not a threat to us for now. In Alpha, things have gone a little bit differently before the party has even arrived at the temple, because someone else has wandered into the temple very recently in search of the secrets this place has to offer. Not deemed a threat just yet by the Arcanoloth, who watched her go, Irina has wandered over and found these witches who ask her, like, who are you and what are you doing here? And she says, I was sent by Baba Lysaga. Have you ever heard of her? And the witches go, oh, yes, we absolutely have. And they immediately teamed up. And the witches, Irina says, I'm looking for the dark secrets of this place. And the witches are like, that sounds great. That's what we're here for. They are kind of affectionate toward Irina in a weird way, while also being jealous of her youth and beauty and loathing her for that. So we have a weird dynamic here. They have together explored a little bit more of the temple in just that area over to the bottom right. And they found a couple of interesting things. One of them is an amulet, and one of them is a gigantic robot with big old robot fists. And we've had enough time with Alpha exploring other parts of the dungeon here that they've had time over here to experiment with these things. And what Irina discovers is that when she wears the amulet, she can give commands to this shield guardian. This is a challenge rating 8 construct that while you wear the amulet, which is present in this dungeon, you can find it, it will have your damage. It takes half of your damage. Also, while you're within 10 feet of it, you get a +2 bonus to armor class. It regenerates 10 hit points every round. It's a big old guy with like 2d6 fists. This is a huge asset to them. And they've decided, okay, we haven't found a better way to break down this amber vault door. We are going to have our shield guardian punch his way through it. Because they have not been super observant of exactly what's been happening with other weird, crazy sounds they've heard in other corners of the dungeon. They haven't figured out that when you start to damage the Amber Temple itself, that a different construct will respond to this. This is the situation that Alpha interrupts, that Irina and her witches have been trying to bash through the door of a vault. The Amber Golem responds to it, and Alpha emerges on one side to try to get to them. However, there's another element thrown into the mix here, because, as I mentioned in chat, I forgot to mention it in the call last time, by now Alpha has noticed that their best friend, Rahadin, is missing. He was with them for the first couple fights, and then suddenly he's not there. It happened actually when they went downstairs, and he kind of lingered to the back of the group, and they just eventually realized that he never came downstairs with them, and they don't know where he is. What Rahadin has done, because he knows this temple like the back of his hand, is he has gone to the secret vault, where all the ghouls are, and he has commanded them to follow him, and they return now. Rahadin with a pack of ghouls. Rahadin has the goal in Alpha to get Irina for Strahd. He hopes to recover her and bring her back to please his master. He is hoping that with the Ember Golem and with his ghouls, he can keep the party busy enough that he can reach Irina, knock her out, sling her over his shoulder, and run off with her to a teleportation circle at the back of the dungeon, which he knows will return him to Castle Ravenloft. He has another asset on his side, which is that he is old buddy and familiar with the Arcanoloth that lives in this temple. Strahd has assuaged that threat some time ago, and he and his minions are able to come and go from here without fear of the Arcanoloth. But there are some other elements that he is not expecting. One is that the party has allied with Viktor Vlahovic, and one is that they have recently, just this moment, allied with Esmeralda d'Avenir, which turns out to be much more significant because as soon as they run up into this conflict, Victor, hanging at the back of the group, disappears back through the secret door in which they came and runs back off toward the library and does not take part in this conflict. This is a big old fight. There's a lot going on. We got Rahadin and ghouls. The ghouls are mostly engaging the party as Rahadin runs past them to reach Irina. Irina's witches stand against Rahadin. They are casting hideous laughter on him every turn, hoping that he can fail a save and be incapacitated. The party makes short work of the ghouls, and Rahadin makes short work of the witches. He is a challenge rating 10 creature. He has 3 scimitar attacks at plus 10. They each do 1d6 plus 6 damage. He also has the Deathly Choir feature. He has killed so many countless creatures during his lifetime that here in cursed Barovia, their spirits have begun to swirl around him within a 10-foot radius. Anybody but him can hear this chorus of screams, but he has command of their suffering. As a bonus action, he can focus on a creature, and if they fail a DC 16 wisdom saving throw, they take 3d10 psychic damage. So the party is able to see these witches trying pluckily to defend Irina, have the blood boil out of their eyes and ears. Others are cut to shreds as Rahadin gets through them. But he is still up against her Shield Guardian as he is trying to get to her. The Amber Golem is headed straight for the Shield Guardian as well, so it is having to hold off both of them, but Irina realizes that the poor Shield Guardian, its attacks are not magical, meaning the Amber Golem is immune to any damage it can deal. It is immune to non-magical, non-adamantine damage. So her only hope is to turn it against Rahadin to help her. Irina is a character I've struggled a lot with during this game because she's very much cast in the tropey position of a damsel in distress. And a lot of people I've seen in their Strahd games will really buff her up to make her like a fighting force. I mean, she's depicted in armor with a sword, so it really feels like you would want her to be a significant combat presence or to be able to really give things back. In the book, Irina has 14 hit points. Her armor class is normally 15. She has a reaction that she can use to increase that by 2. The Guardian, also being near her, increases it by 2. So her best asset in this fight is that she has 19 armor class. I thought a lot about it, and I decided that I wanted to challenge myself more because I really wanted Irina to be a badass who could really fight back, and for her to instead feel helpless as in her NPC position, I thought would be just really challenging for me and kind of force us to play into stories that brought the PCs to the greater forefront, because ultimately she will have to rely on them to do her fighting for her. So I kept her as she was, which is extremely vulnerable. Even with her taking half damage, Rahadin would have only needed to deal 28 damage to take her out, which with his 3 attacks and his bonus action, he could have done in a single round pretty easily. But he simply cannot hit her. He rolls so bad. He spends 2 rounds just attacking her, and with the Shield Guardian and with her reaction and him just not being able to get his dice together, he is not able to land the hits he needs to before the party wipes out his ghouls and catches up to this conflict. So he has to make a choice here, which is, does he stay and try to stick this out, or does he realize that this is not a good position for him? He decides to run and is feeling even like maybe he's left it one round too late. But Rahadin is pretty nimble. He's got a movement, he's got a dash, and he has a misty step. He runs through the whole conflict here. I think he does take some attacks of opportunity that he can't avoid. He's really just trying to beat feet so he doesn't disengage. It becomes very clear that the party is not going to focus the Amber Golem. They're not going to really do much to the Amber Golem. They're focusing him first and foremost, identifying him as a greater threat because he's been attacking Irina. So the Golem is not being the distraction he had hoped for.
Gone.
Am I gone?
Alan, you're gone.
Oh no. I can hear you guys.
Said something about beating feet and then you left. You beat feet.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he shot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's coming back. How did you Alpha people feel in this fight? What was your impression of this fight?
Yeah.
So Rahadin does successfully make it out of the little box that he's gotten himself into. He runs out of the wing here, and he misty steps up onto the platform looking over the main room, and he's even able to move a little closer to the door after that. On his next turn, he's planning to move and dash and bonus action stealth. He has a plus 14 modifier to stealth, and he knows the secret doors in the temple, which there is one very close by to him, so he's hoping he can remain hidden until the party moves on enough that he can slip around them and escape. And it seems like the party is pretty well occupied fighting the Amber Golem down below or avoiding the Arcanoloth in the Faceless Statue, except that our party Warlock still has a spell slot left for Misty Step and is able to get level to Rahadin and plunges Kavan the Blood Spear through his heart and killing him. After which, he immediately uses a class feature he got a couple levels ago and has been waiting on, where he commands Rahadin's dark soul to rise again at his bidding, creating a wraith from the slain Rahadin. Kavan thinks this is so metal that his opinion of action does an immediate 180, and he finally accepts action as his wielder, conferring his full properties to him from that point on. So in neither game did we get Rahadin being a creepy, malevolent force within Castle Ravenloft who would just guide you from location to whatever, and you guys would both know that you would want to just kill each other if it weren't for the bonds of hospitality that forced him to leave you alone. Instead, in both games, he dies like a bitch in the Amber Temple, and I hope that you take a quantum of solace from your own efforts.
Oh my god.
The party is able to lead the Amber Golem away from Irina and the Shield Guardian, who he was absolutely beating the snot out of. They deal damage to a different part of the temple so that it runs off in that direction. And Van Richten has the idea that he will escape by using his Hat of Disguise to look like Exithanter and walking out of the main space. What he doesn't know is that the Arcanoloth has true seeing. So Van Richten takes a chain lightning that knocks him down real low, but he is able to escape. So the party is kind of scattered off in different directions. Van Richten has to run off to a totally separate side of the temple. Other members of the party have to kind of slide off away from the Amber Golem until it finally retreats. Action sends out his Rahadin Wraith. It flies in front of the Faceless Statue, and the Arcanoloth, seeing it with a readied action, immediately just casts Banishment on it, and it disappears, and we don't know what's happened to it, and Action leaves well before the minute is up. So when the Wraith reappears a minute after the spell is cast, it's just alone in this empty room, and it spends the whole, I think almost the entire rest of its duration, trying to find action again in this temple. And does not survive very long past getting back to him, is my memory. But we have recovered Irina, which is the most important part. All of her recent witch companions have been slain, but she has otherwise come out of this mostly unscathed, with her shield guardian still very much intact. But she's not entirely safe yet, because we are able to speak now frankly about her reason for coming here. It is not exactly under false pretenses that she's been led here by Baba Lysaga, because she is very cognizant of the lengths to which her brother and other companions of hers will go in an effort to save her. And she is beginning to feel like all of their sacrifice is not worth it. If she is to die or become a consort to Strahd, that is a sacrifice of one person, and it will stop all the rest of the people around her, people that she cares about, from being butchered and dying horrible deaths. And this is a mindset that is somewhat supported by the fact that her companions, the party, came all the way to the Amber Temple to try to save her, a very awful place where they were almost just eaten by ghouls. And so she is feeling pretty keenly still that she wants to follow through on what Baba Lysaga offered to her, that she tried to find the dark gifts, that she tried to accept them, that if by doing this she could allow like this evil into her soul, then Strahd would cease to see her as being so pure and this fantastical image of a woman that he once loved, and will finally just leave her alone. She would rather live a cursed existence than allow her friends to die for her or allow Strahd to take her. So that is still what she is hoping for. The party will have to persuade her of to do some work to dissuade her of this. There are a couple of things that I was holding out for with this. I wanted one tactic to be that the party could convince Irina that the dark gifts are not worth it, and they immediately take this position with her, and she counter-argues, like, you don't know anything about them. You don't actually know what kind of deal is implicit in this. And they pretty strongly stick to the stance of, we don't really need to know. We know that they are evil gifts, and it's already enough to say, like, don't make that kind of sacrifice. She's willing to hear them out because they are very insistent, but she lets them know this is going to be a much more effective argument if you can give me actual evidence of this. The other tactic that the players could take, which is supported by their victory that they've just had, is to say, you don't need to make the sacrifice of yourself because we can beat Strahd. Even, like, I mean, another tactic maybe for taking the dark gifts would be in case they gave her the power to overcome him, but she's not really thinking that. But it is possible for the party to convince her, this is a fight we can win, and you are not going to get us killed in this effort. Instead, we actually are going to save you. It is your despair and your low self-esteem that is telling you otherwise. So these are the two mindsets you could come into this with. They push enough on either of these that she's willing to relent on her search for now. There's a big part of her that wants to just try to push past them. She has the shield guardian and maybe feels like she could try just to like rush to whatever sarcophagus she can find and try to inquire about a deal or take a deal. But they managed to convince her to back off for the time being and let them explore the temple and try to make a more educated decision. They're still going to have to do a little more work to convince her all the way. Over in Prime, I'm just going to kind of sum up what they have accomplished at this point. So we have talked to Exithanter. We have learned about the vaults. There is some poltergeists, which both parties fight at some point, or maybe have an undead paladin do for them. Prime and Alpha have both slaughtered all the witches, and they have both defeated the vampire spawn in the deepest part of the temple. And Prime in particular has, at this point, successfully rescued Esmeralda and Van Richten. So just that tally of everything that we have accomplished as we're pushing forward. Something that is still left outstanding that we have to talk about is Casimir's entire reason for coming to this dungeon. So we're skipping back a little bit in time to when we push in and fight the vampire spawn. Having defeated them in the deep inner sanctum, Casimir approaches the amber sarcophagi here. He believes that one of them is the one he has come here seeking. He believes there is a vestige here that can give him the ability to raise the ancient dead. The party has a lot of misgivings about accepting dark gifts, hearing them out, but clearly Casimir is so fervent in his desire for this that they're willing to give him the leeway to try. And so we do. He communes with the vestige and seems to sincerely gain the ability to raise one creature from the dead as per resurrection with no time limit. But he realizes upon turning to the party that he still needs to have the requisite diamond to cast this spell, an extremely expensive diamond, far and above even what the parties would have needed for Raise Dead. The spell does not give him the ability to overcome this requirement, and he rages against the sarcophagi for not including this information or including it as a benefit. We can also see a price that he has immediately elected to pay. His skin begins to decay before the party's very eyes. His face, his features sink within themselves. He takes on the countenance of an undead, withered version of himself. If we can imagine Godfrey's art in his undead knight form, Casimir becomes that unto himself. They do some experimentation on him. He has not truly become undead. He simply looks like a corpse. We are given to understand this is a permanent price that he has paid for this power, but he has earned it, and he desperately asks the party to promise him that they will help him accrue the wealth that he needs to make it so that his sacrifice is not in vain, and he will be able to resurrect his sister at the castle. They make the case that hopefully in the castle we can find such wealth, or accumulate it otherwise, and we can do this for you.
Man, we were really banking on him being useful, and I really don't think that it ended up paying off. But
funny.
I'll also say that much of the party had misgivings about the dark gifts, but not Dr. Flint. Dr. Flint just wanted to hear the old gods out, going, "Come on, gifts."
I think one of the biggest issues, for at least for me, it's always, obviously you're hitting a monkey's paw, or not even monkey's paw, just you're gonna pay a nasty price for this. But it was they were all so vague and just very difficult to know what they could be, because it's especially for you take Action Jack, right? There's a lot of prices, things that he would have been willing to take on for extra power, but there was just very few ways to actually know what you were gonna get.
Yeah.
And it also wasn't entirely clear at what stage of just touching the statue, when did things start? When did things exactly happen? And we just weren't willing to have anyone do that experiment.
You didn't get to just watch somebody do it like we did, so we were you can touch it, it's fine.
Yeah,
we just touched the statue.
Yeah.
I think we
touched the statue at some point.
I think we may have had someone touch the statue and maybe communicate a little bit, but it was still just we were just we were just so nervous about it.
Yeah, well, when it comes to trusting an NPC wizard, and maybe it does or doesn't pay off at the end, and do you get to watch them accept a dark gift or do you not? It is true that the Alpha Party doesn't know where Victor went while they were fighting Rahadin, and doesn't know why he began to behave so differently when he returned to their party. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. Nobody elected to abandon that fight to follow him to see what he was up to.
Victor can do what he wants.
Yeah. Jumping back over to Alpha, we kind of we realized in the recap, we do just a lot of back and forth, stop and starty kind of stuff in Alpha, where we went to a location and did some of it and then left and then came back. And it's kind of this way in the temple where as I was starting to do the timeline, I'm I don't even remember when all these fights happened necessarily, but at some point Alpha is still exploring down the lower level, and they get in a big old fight. I think they are ambushed by the Arcanoloth, who is invisibly walking around the dungeon and just like fireballs them out of nowhere.
No.
Flees back.
He did his Irina and the shield golem went to like one side, and then he and maybe Esmeralda too or something. No, it was Esmeralda. He changed his voice with magic to make it sound like me telling Esmeralda that all was clear and she could come out.
That's right.
And then she did, and he hit the chain lightning, and she was like,
yeah.
Or no, I think he finger of death turned.
That's what it was. Thank you. We did miss that in the recap, but I remember it clear as day now that you say it. Yes, Esmeralda has gone off exploring with a little group. We all hear Action's voice calling to her, hey, she can come back out. She walks into the open. She takes a huge spell that prompts a rush to save her, and a first responder on that scene is Van Richten, still as Rictavio. Esmeralda, I think, is unconscious on the ground making death saves when he reaches her, and he cannot help in this moment as he revives her to confess his true identity to her, which is that of her former mentor, Rudolf Van Richten, with the additional twist that she has already figured this out. During the fight with Rahadin, as he was using specific abilities, I was rolling insight checks for her, and she succeeded the very first one, and has been aware the entire time that Van Richten has been choosing not to reveal himself to her. So it's with mixed emotions that we get out of this encounter, and he is unable to adequately explain himself to her when she kind of pushes on this. And so we have the revelation of these characters reuniting now, but while they've been a little more open about certain aspects of their relationship, and there are a lot of positive emotions behind this reunion, there's also a lot of questions and a lot of negativity hanging charged in the air between them as well. Was someone trying to say something during that? No? Okay.
I was talking to a cat. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard somebody's mic clipping in just barely. So it is kind of in the recuperation from this that Victor returns to us, and he's just acting really nice. He is being super cooperative, and he's trying to like talk up to people and make shows of gratitude to them. And my impression of y'all's reaction is that we like this even less.
Yeah, everyone recoiled even more from him.
Yeah, which he seems to be frustrated by.
Action was like, all right, this is good. He's clearly accepted some sort of stupid gift that makes him like want to be liked by us or something. So that is absolutely an outcome I am okay with. I don't care as if I can turn him towards my enemies. I don't care.
In actuality, what has happened is that Victor has gone and communed with an amber sarcophagi, and it has given him a gift of knowledge, not a power or a passive benefit or anything like that, but he knows something that he hopes to leverage to his own ends with the eventual destination of leaving Barovia, of escaping it. He is attempting to begin to act on this knowledge, but in an extremely misguided and inefficient way. Van Richten is one of the people who picks up that this is weird, and he decides to do something about it. And the way that he responds to this is leveraging his own sort of peculiar situation. This is something that eventually we got to get all of in Alpha or in the Alpha recap. But the truth is, and this is true in both games, that Van Richten is living under a curse the whole time that he is in this adventure, and for decades before this. It is not something that he is able to get rid of on his own. He has tried many times and has given up on this being beyond him. The phrasing of the curse, or what he believes the curse to be, is this: that everyone who loves him will be killed by monsters before him.
Whoa.
His belief in this it's questionable whether it is stronger than the effect of the curse itself. I'll talk more about the context when it will actually be revealed in alpha. Then we'll get everything that surrounds it. But at some point somebody said this to him, that he would be cursed to see everyone who loved him killed by monsters, and he believes this very strongly. It's never like since that happened, he has not seen someone who loved him like killed before him. But long ago, when Esmeralda is bitten on the leg by a werewolf and he amputates it hurriedly and she barely survives, he is so certain that this happened because of the curse that he decides then and there to end their mentor-student relationship and leaves. And that is the last time they saw each other before the events of this campaign, something she has lived in resentment of and has been trying to understand. But Van Richten does not share this curse with anybody because he believes that if you are a good person and you hear that somebody is cursed in this way, it will endear that person to you, which is the last thing that he wants, because he doesn't want this to happen to anybody. He has chosen to live a life where he is just unlikable enough that no one will get too close to him, while still being likable enough to get his work accomplished. This is something that Luke has been role-playing beautifully through this whole campaign. And I could tell, especially with Luke, I was really having a hard time putting him in this situation because it was his first time doing a campaign with all of us and very much wanted to do the role-play of it very clearly. And I even did change it a little bit from what's in the book. So in the book, it just says everybody that he loves will be killed by monsters. I still wanted Luke to be able to love other characters. I thought that would be worse to tell him that if he loved creatures, something bad would happen to them, than to say if somebody loves you, something bad will happen to them. So I inverted it, and I thought that would be more interesting. And what it means is that as much as he might like his player characters, his companions, he is trying to keep them enough at arm's length that they never form that strong a bond. But this came out in the post-campaign too. We notice here that Van Richten starts to act differently toward Victor, and I thought he was doing it because he was trying to get close to Victor so that Victor would kind of tell him what was going on. But actually, while doing prep for Rudolph Van Richten, I told Luke, what this might do is around characters you don't care about as much, you might be able to be more yourself with them. I was trying to indicate, you don't need to worry so much about their opinion of them, of you. So you can be more honest with them without worry about them catching feelings, or whatever. So it might be kind of nice to be around people you don't give a shit about and they don't give a shit about you. You won't have to be playing this game constantly. He slightly misinterprets this because what I say is more along the lines of you can, maybe people you don't care about this curse with them. And so what he thinks is, if I can get Victor to love me, then the curse will take care of him. So at the same time, Victor and Van Richten are suddenly being really nice to each other. And it's really creepy and uncomfortable for everybody.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those things where like two people are trying to suck up to each other, but for different reasons, and they're there's deception, but neither of them knows what the deception is, and they're just yeah, isn't that a good idea?
It was a bad time.
You're so right. Oh my god, yeah, I was just thinking the same thing, and everyone around them is I don't know.
Jack, what microphone are you using? Because it is just hellish.
Oh, really? It's actually coming through pretty well for me. Speak again.
Yeah.
It's extremely loud and extremely echoey.
Oh,
it's not echoey for me.
You could have him turned up in your Discord.
I had Kayla muted because she was picking up all of Alan's noise.
Oh, really?
What?
Okay.
You can mute other people?
Yeah, darn.
Yeah, you can.
What? Holy fuck! I want to do that for so long.
What do you think I do whenever I'm playing? What do you think I do when I play D&D with you?
God,
Mute everyone else so you can only hear me.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
All right.
Alan,
What's up?
I
I was trying to do both. I was trying to weaponize my curse against him, but I was also trying to find out what's going on so I could stop him.
Yeah.
And it's part of that is like it's like you probably don't have like a specific timeline on when the curse activates.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe I can get the info now, and then he dies later.
Yeah, exactly. And one other thing to the group, I mean, you might have been creeped out yourselves, but you never saw like everything I'm like sending to Alan, like secret like nudges to Victor. So there you go.
Yeah. A lot of time Luke is sending me messages about like things that he is planning to do in session, or like little interactions he's hoping to have with people and not clog the airwaves with. Sendings he is sending to people and things like that. So.
I never once talked to Alan outside of like the main group.
It's true. Yeah. I don't believe that she remembered this game existed except for during Sunday. No.
Actually, over the entire duration of the Strahd campaign, the two of them didn't.
I barely know this person who was.
Yeah. But this is part of Van Richten's mixed feelings about seeing Esmeralda again. He is extremely worried that her feelings for him are going to get her messily killed in front of him. So as much as he wants to take her into his arms and protect her, and as much as he wants her to like him, the longer he can keep her angry with him, the safer she will be, is the belief and the hope. This is going to come to a head when we eventually arrive at our final rumble for Alpha. At a certain point with both groups, we reach a point where I'm like, okay, we've done enough investigating here. We've done enough dancing around these Temple's Guardians. Let's finish things up. Let's kick things off. So we do end up having a final battle here, and this is the Arcanoloth deciding to come out and not pussyfoot around anymore, but really start wreaking havoc. The Amber Golem reacting to the violence, and also we had some Flame Skulls back over in a corner, and it felt like we weren't ever going to go check there at any point. So they come flying out, and they join the whole thing. Victor is trying to be super helpful, so he pushes himself to the forefront. He gets chain lightninged by the Arcanoloth, which could have knocked him out from full hit points very easily. Average damage of that spell is more than his total hit points. He isn't bloodied because I roll such absolute dog shit.
Oh, yeah.
It is really giving people a runaround because it can just teleport 60 feet as a action. It can also cast Dimension Door, so it is going to one position and sniping, and then going to another position and sniping. Nyx is being a headache because she is trying to dispel things and counterspell things. So the Arcanoloth figures out the distances, gets it right, and banishes her. And I have to make a judgment call about the spell Banishment and how it's going to act in Barovia. Because in Barovia, specifically anything that sends you to another plane fails, but with the idea being that you can't use that kind of magic to escape Barovia. Now, Banishment just says that it takes you to a harmless demi-plane for like a minute until the spell has expired. And I thought, harmless? That doesn't sound very much like Barovia. So instead, Nyx is cast into the ethereal plane in Barovia for the duration of this spell, which is the same place that Lucian and Tox wandered as ghosts. She is as a ghost in this place. Her companions cannot hear or see her. She cannot interact with the material plane or the goings-on. She can see the mists. She can see the spirits in the Amber Temple. And she, in combat, as in initiative, as the rest of the party is fighting all of these horrors, decides to make as good on this as she can, realizing that she's temporarily like immune to whatever the Arcanoloth could do to her, gets up inside that faceless statue. And there discovers something interesting. And
okay, like, to be clear, not just taking advantage of that, I was trying to get away from those crazy shadows that were coming after me.
Yeah, because just like in the Abbey of St. Markovia, there are malevolent spirits definitely in the Amber Temple. It is a place that, it actually says in the box text, I don't think I did this for anybody, but just that anyone who walks into the Amber Temple can immediately feel that the location itself is pure evil. So this is a bad place to be. It's a bad place to be a spirit and have other spirits out to be interested in you. So an attempt to get away from them goes up into the statue and maybe remembers at this moment, maybe it doesn't, that one of the party's cards specifically mentions the hooded figure in the place at the end of the mountains. And within the statue's hood, she finds the hilt of a sword upon the ground. She is able to wrestle herself back into the material plane, where she is now in complete magical darkness, but groping about, discovers the hilt of the sword. I think that you dispel the darkness in here. Is that true? Do you remember, Kayla?
I do not remember.
Do not remember. We managed to get out of here, and at a later point we'll inspect this handle and summon forth from it a blade of pure sunlight. This is Alpha finally finding the sun sword, as the cards predicted, deep in the Amber Temple. Their battle is going to rage on a little bit longer, but eventually they do bust down the Amber Golem. Something about the Amber Golem is that it's like immune to most weapon damage and has no resistance to any like magical elemental damage. It has advantage on most saving throws, but it has like a -1 dexterity saving throw modifier. So once people start fireballing it, it just melts eventually. It has a lot of hit points, but not enough to stand up to that kind of barrage. So they eventually work it down. The jackal is left by itself, and they chase it around. They isolate it. Esmeralda is up against it at one point and has disadvantage on a saving throw against its attempt to suggest to her. I think that she like walk off onto the mountain and not come back. And it is because of the curse on Van Richten that she has disadvantage on this and fails her save, because it is indeed real, as he suspects, but I would have never confirmed that mechanically to anyone, even to him, but I'm confirming it to you now. I simply said to Van Richten that he believed that perhaps that could have been the cause, and in fact it was. But they are able to rescue her from this charm. They're able to smack the guy or just or dispel it or something. They release her from it, and Victor, helpful Victor, look everybody, love me for all the good things I do for you, Victor slays the Arcanoloth. And it is finally dead. At about the same...
Can I interject really quick on that?
Yes.
Was that the fight started, or nearly started, with me sending the Rahadin Wraith, or Spectre, inside the head of the statue, because it's just like an incorporeal ghost thing. I was like, go inside the statue and kill the guy in there. And then, like, really, like, within the turn, our Nick started throwing fireballs in there and blowing in the fuck, and I think we also may have shattered inside it, and like quick early, like within the first couple rounds of the fight, the Arcanoloth was like, I need to not be in here. The Spectre that was in here with me got blown up immediately before it could do anything, but I need to not be in here because they keep blowing me up. It was really funny. And then he finger of death me, and I did survive. But then he just like, what did he do? He just kept fucking me. He knocked me out, and he just kept ruining it. I was trying to chase him down, and he just like cast spells and ruined my life.
I remember it was a running theme at this point that you would cast Spirit Shroud and then immediately get knocked out and lose like concentration on it or something.
Yeah,
and
that happens with pretty high frequency.
Yeah.
Aha! I will now activate my spell. I've lost my spell.
So there are some similarities between how Alpha handles this fight and how Prime handles this fight. It happens a little differently for Prime. The way things kick off here is that Godfrey has walked off to take Rahadin and stick him in a secure room that they found while exploring. Their plan is to simply imprison him here until the campaign is over, because we have too many lawful good people around to just kind of squish him. And also we have some feelings about maybe we could interrogate him, but could we trust anything that he says? You know what? We're just going to eliminate him as a variable. And maybe we'll come talk to him when everything is done. So he goes off to do that. He actually comes back pretty quickly without Rahadin, and stepping into the fortress where they are, this instant fortress, he says something to the effect of like, we need to make a plan. We need to decide what we're going to do next, what our strengths and vulnerabilities are.
No.
Oh no, am I gone?
It was almost time.
Oh my god.
All right, I'll just continue. Yeah, he steps into the fortress and he comes up to...
What is happening?
Am I back? Hello?
Sparky is also having connection issues.
All I know is that Sparky and Andrew and Alan are just kind of like talking at each other, and I have no idea what you guys are doing.
What's happening?
Can you guys hear me?
Everything's breaking up.
Maybe it was me. I thought Alan was just gone, but maybe it was me actually, and then my voice got all fucked up. Oh, I am in a place where my internet just like turns off every 20 minutes for like 30 seconds at a time. So my bad.
That's okay.
I think reasonably assumed it was Alan.
Yeah,
good.
Understandable. Can people hear me?
We can hear both of you now.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was happening is that he comes in and he says, Van Richten, is this thing controlled by some sort of command word? Like, how easy or difficult is this fortress we're depending on to pick up or put down? And I roll an insight check for Van Richten, and the result is very low. And he says, well, there's a command word, and it's this. And Godfrey says, and then he speaks aloud the command word, and the instant fortress folds up instantly.
Oh, no.
And they are all left exposed in the center of the chamber, and I ask them to immediately roll initiative. Because, in fact, this is not Godfrey Gwillem, but it is Arcanoloth,
nice.
who has taken the opportunity, all sorts of trickster abilities, these Arcanoloths. So we have a fight that kicks off. So the weak point of this plan is that it involves this guy starting combat in the middle of the entire party. So we're really banking on rolling high initiative in order to get out of this, and we do pretty well. So we only, I think, Cinder fucks us up for a little bit, and then we poof out of here. But we have done what we sought out to do, which is we are able to poof back up into the statue before our life is snuffed out. And since the whole party is exposed, they are in the open for the flame skulls, who come flying out of a corner to open fire on. Godfrey does come running back in from another wing of the dungeon going, "What's happening?" And a whole bunch of ghouls who haven't had a Rahadin to bring them into the fight earlier now come pouring in. They've been brought here by the Arcanoloth, who has teleported off to summon them. And also the sound of all the destruction and the hubbub once again summons the Amber Golem. So we get a right proper rumpus here once and for all to kind of finish out our combat experiences. It's in the middle of this fight, because it takes place over multiple sessions, that we get a new player join the group. Carter! Carter, we did it! It took us 300 PowerPoint slides. This is slide 300, but we got here. He comes in and he's playing an NPC, and I've also given Carter a pretty decent document with Godfrey's backstory and everything, and with all of his abilities, and he does a really good job. He picks it up and he cruises with it. The thing about Godfrey in his original stat block is he has 4 smite spells, which are bonus action extra damage casts, and I've whittled it down to, okay, you're gonna have some healing, you're still gonna have, of course, dispel magic, and I'm gonna give you the paladin smite ability, which is easier to keep track of than all these smite spells. So we're still gonna have the really good stuff. And I just can't make Carter, new to this group, play such a cool guy with this art. Godfrey gets punched really hard by the Amber Golem, and it somehow magically summons back his super cool form with super great art. But also, he's punched so hard, his voice box is so damaged that he loses his British accent entirely. and will sound completely different for the rest of the campaign. Immediately,
that's exactly what he said to start off with.
Yeah. Carter immediately jumped a pretty high stakes moment to jump into, especially because Godfrey was, I think, soloing the Amber Golem at this particular moment. But he just immediately came in and was like, so I've been told that this thing it needs to take magical damage. So as a bonus action, I cast Magic Weapon, and then I hit it and I smite it with every hit because it doesn't reduce the radiant damage either. And it just immediately picked it up. Carter, do we still have you? I saw you were in here earlier.
Yes, I'm still here.
How was it jumping into this? How did this feel?
It was a lot of fun. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah?
Yeah. No, it was a great time.
I was certainly worried about giving you a lot to begin with, and this is also a character that the party was fairly reliant on to this point. And actually, Taylor had asked, could Carter play a character, not Godfrey though, because she just liked my voice for Godfrey too much. So I was also worried about pissing her off in the course of this, but it just made the most sense for you to be in this position as the fated ally.
To be fair, I also ended up really liking Carter as Godfrey. So
Carter had good Godfrey energy, much in the way that Christy had good Esmeralda energy.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised that you that you ended up adding a new player to control an NPC that had been with them for so long. That's a really bold move. I don't know what else you would have done.
Well, I didn't have another NPC, because we had other NPCs in this group who certainly could have been picked up. Like, we have Van Richten and Esmeralda at this point. Yeah. We have Casimir, who, for reasons that should be pretty obvious to Prime, is not a good candidate for this. I'd also previously had Christy playing Esmeralda, so that would have felt weird to have Carter step into that. And I had Luke in the other game playing Van Richten, so... as complicated as Godfrey can be, Van Richten has all these spells and way more backstory, actually, so I really felt like that would be a lot. And also, even though Godfrey was a significant presence here, we still had a fair amount of backstory and characterization we hadn't gotten too deep into. And also, he'd been with them for a while, but not, honestly, as these things have shown, as these recaps have shown, for even the majority of their experience. He'd been with them for a couple of chapters, but I found it was pretty easy to kind of describe what had happened or to recall it if it became relevant. And it didn't require a super nuanced understanding of what's going on. It was also late enough in the campaign. I was just kind of running dry on other options at this point.
Sure.
We'd met most people of significance at this point.
I also appreciate that he had, some regular attacks and some magic and not a ton of magic, because the only previous character I played in a campaign had been a monk. So all I had done was punch things. So this is it was helpful to have not too many spells, but some.
Yeah, at a certain point, having too many abilities kind of becomes a hindrance, as you can only remember so many. So it's easier to have them kind of having unique properties within your character. And also Godfrey, I knew that his biggest asset for the party, by and large, was just going to be getting the shit kicked out of him, because he has more hit points than anybody else, and he regenerates his hit points. So I had never played with Carter before. I didn't know what your level of comfort was going to be, and I thought at the very least he can just walk up and get the shit kicked out of him, and people will say, thank God for Carter and Godfrey. So from that perspective, it felt like a
die, I think.
So technically, he can only be killed if fire or radiant damage is what reduces him to 0 hit points. I ignored that when I wanted to. So I think at one point he falls and gets scrambled and is fine. But when Baba Lysaga lightning bolted him, I was like, that'll do it. And he'll have to. And so he still cannot die. The worst he can do is resurrect another body. There will be time lost if that happens. It is supposed to take 24 hours. And then, honestly, actually, they give me a table for this. I'm supposed to roll out of all the possible locations in Barovia where there are dead bodies to see where he rejuvenates. And then he would have to move from there to the party, which I was just going to say, no, somewhere nearby, so that it just takes like a long rest, basically. But that was a rule that I did implement for a different Revenant, and we'll see the payoff of that later. But with Carter's help, the group fights through this whole rumpus. The Arcanoloth is this just a blank slide? Yes, it is. No, it'll have an animation come in. They have the Arcanoloth up in the head of the statue, and like just so many, I think Tox and Shava and Esmeralda and Casimir all fire area effect spells up into it, and they just blow him to smithereens. I think he succeeds almost every saving throw because he has advantage on them, and it just doesn't matter. They just absolutely melt him with massive damage because, no, they can't see him. He's in the darkness, but that doesn't matter. They know where he is approximately. So he's shattered, he's fireballed, and he's lightning bolted, and that's the end of him. Unfortunately, because of all the massive damage raining down from him and from the flame skulls, our poor gladiator companion, the last of the berserkers who is still with us, I think, at this point, is cut down by magic and killed. So we have a bit of a different resolution with their arcs in these two games because our alpha barbarian actually survives to the end of the Amber Temple. And also, when the party got to the Amber Temple, Kavan was being wielded by somebody whom Kavan had not immediately accepted. In Prime, Kavan immediately goes, Cinder is suitably bloodthirsty and barbaric. She rips people's throats out with her teeth, absolutely, and is still in telepathic communication in their whispered ancient tongue with these other berserkers, but is never seriously considering anything perfidious. But in Alpha, he's going, well, if I can't have Van Richten, well, actually, here is a warrior, a descendant of my aged people, someone who treats me with respect, and she is extremely strong. Not strong enough to take on this whole party, but she's already wielding a spear. Certainly she would love to wield me. In Alpha, Kavan has been whispering to her, trying to convince her that when the time is right, perhaps if the party's at a moment of weakness, she could challenge action to single combat, or perhaps just take him out in a moment of weakness and accept Kavan for herself. She, meanwhile, has been watching the party run train through all the horrors in this cursed temple that she was told was certain death, as all of her followers are shredded to pieces around her, and never at any point seriously considers this option. So she's just kind of weirdly uncomfortable the whole time, and then eventually after the dungeon kind of salutes everybody and says, okay, goodbye, and leaves.
Well, good for her. Mm-hmm. At the end of our fight, she runs upstairs and gets blown up by the flame skulls, and then I run in to avenge her and just solo all three. I'm pretty sure just solo all three of the flame skulls because I'm like, I resist fire and I have the shield spell, so fuck your fire damage and fuck your magic missiles. Eat glaive.
And this is why you give yourself red shirts as a DM. They had all used their once per day fireballs on only her.
Yeah.
So they were missing their heaviest cannon thing. I included a slide here of the Amber Golem. Oh, this is why I've written notes here. Because after this fight cools down, the only thing left to do, both parties handle this at the same time. We finally go and knock on this treasure vault that we've known about because we saw a carved out passage to it from the vampire spawn room. We go up in here and we fight a permanently invisible Amber Golem, which it's worth noting, Alpha had known from the sounds that there was an Amber Golem in there and had never gotten close enough to realize that they could not see it and had just assumed that it was the same Amber Golem, that there was one Amber Golem in this whole temple and it had moved from wherever it was to this place. And so they open the door to the vault and walk in, believing they have already destroyed this Amber Golem. Which gives the fight just a little bit of extra kick when we start getting into it.
Did we describe what happened to Dr. Flint when we discovered this guy?
Oh, yeah. Dr. Flint just fully walks into the room. in Prime...
No. Those specific words are specifically wrong.
Yeah, I know you remember them being wrong, but I really remember it having a specific word.
No, incorrect.
All right.
There was a crack in the wall that led into the vault, and I specifically walked through the crack to the end of the crack, but not into the room.
That is where the room is at the end of the crack.
Yeah, well, no. I was inside the crack and then grabbed and pulled out of the crack by an invisible thing. Mm-hmm. And then luckily Shava ran up and grabbed me and dimension doored me out or something.
Yes. In Alpha, a vampire spawn fled from them through that crack, and then they heard it being accordioned violently, so they knew ahead of time that something dangerous was in there. But Prime did not have that luxury, because they killed the vampire spawn too quickly. Very unfortunate. And it is only after doing all of this that Prime walks in and finds this shield guardian in a room by itself. Dr. Flynn finds a medallion and uses it and finds he can command this shield guardian. He names it the Iron Giant, and he is flush with the new power that this offers him. But neither party is ready to leave the Ember Temple yet.
His name was Hogarth. Which is from the movie The Iron Giant.
I remember
but it's actually the name of the little boy.
That's a great reference.
Oh man, did I get that wrong?
I would also like to interject that this was a very important part in our 5e experience, where we learned that the creatures with immunity or whatever to non-magic or silver attacks could be just squished by a hard enough force. When the Amber Golem was just like, yes, I kill this vampire spawn.
Yeah, literally no way for the vampire spawn to deal damage to the Amber Golem. So
no, that happened in Prime too. It definitely fled through and got squished. Yeah. And we thought maybe there's some sort of mechanism.
Did it happen too?
Yeah, oh no, we thought there was a trap in there because of the vampire.
Yeah, we thought it was like a trap.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay,
not wrong.
I remembered there being some confusion.
Yeah, we thought there was a trap. That's why I walked to because we knew that it had gone into the room and then hit a trap. So I walked to the edge of the room and then was grabbed unexpectedly.
Yeah, the trap is just that you make your golem invisible.
Well, he's invisible. Yeah.
Now, it is supposed to be in the book, so I'll confess this, that the Amber Golem can cast Greater Invisibility one time.
Cool.
Which it lasts for rounds per level.
Yeah. No, it lasts for a minute, but yeah.
Yeah, still though. I was like, no. That because they also in other places demonstrated that they didn't know that Greater Invisibility didn't last any time at all. They were like, this character just casts this spell and then sneaks around all of Castle Ravenloft. I'm like, no, they don't. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
So I apologize for that. But seeing as it was your last fight here, and on the other side are Untold Riches. Ooh, we have all these. And I think in Prime, we find a bunch of diamonds here. Sufficient diamonds for Casimir to use his dark gift the one time that is granted to him. So we will keep them on hold for that dread purpose.
Well, we do use Hogarth in the fight against the invisible... The invisible dude.
Just immediately.
Yeah. To do no damage, right? Because it doesn't have magical attacks.
He didn't help at all. Yep. Well, he made me take less damage.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think he took some hits.
Yeah, he tanked.
Yeah, very cool. And even though that's the last of the combat encounters here, we still have some unanswered questions. One of them is, can we make the case in Alpha to Irina that she should abandon her quest for the dark gifts? She has been convinced, seeing them clear out the Amber Temple. This is her first time seeing the PCs fight high-level threats. The last time she was in combat with them was against a bunch of zombies, or against the Burgomaster and 2 guards in the Vallaki town square. So she is now convinced, okay, you guys can actually handle some things that looked absolutely impossible to me. So I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm willing to take a leap of faith on you. I'll abandon my purpose at the Amber Temple here and trust that you can save me from this situation. We, in Alpha, are also of the opinion, having heard the whisperings of the sarcophagi and having spoken a little bit with Exithanter, that the dark gifts are really bad news, and we've gone to these lengths to convince Irina just not to do them on principle. And I think to a great extent, maybe because of this, and also because we came here to save her, not to find any lore or any knowledge in particular, but to get her, and we've accomplished that now. Alpha, at this time, will leave the Amber Temple without doing any more investigation into the dark gifts, without restoring Exothanter's memories. We pledge that maybe we'll return at some point, but for now, we feel we've done enough, and we need to get Irina to safety, and we depart. Prime is going to spend a little more time here. Prime came here with kind of the group stated goal of learning more about what was going on, trying to figure out if it is even possible. They haven't made up their minds about whether they would do this if they had the means, but could we free Strahd from his curse? Do we agree that Strahd is cursed? Can we discover more about this whole situation? Both parties in agreement having been told by their advisors that there's more going on here than is explained by Strahd just being a vampire. We hook onto the fact that one of the vestiges named in the Incants of Exothanter is called Vampire, and we believe that his gift of vampirism must have come from this creature. But Prime commits to doing a little more research and a little more experimentation into the dark gifts, which is where I finally want to really talk about the dark gifts. I'm going to talk about how the book represents them, and then I'm going to talk about some alterations that I made to them. So this art is from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, so thank you everybody for not reading that while we were still in this campaign, because they talk at length about dark gifts and vestiges in that book, apparently. So something that was already mentioned tonight is something that they do say emphatically in the book that they want you to do it this way, which is that they should only be described in very general terms, that the vestiges that are making these offers will be extremely vague, will definitely not let you see any fine print of what is happening here, won't even really tell you what the benefits are of this whole thing. They're just going to, and you could, say it's because they're super sly and tricksty, or I was also trying to play it a bit from the end of they can't really engage in proper two-way communication with you. They are so vestigial, they are so mad from their millennia of imprisonment here that pretty much all that is left is an echo of their yearning to be important and powerful and known in the world again, that they desperately want to be worshipped and for their powers to be used, and that is the only shred of them that remains after all this time. So that echoing desire is going to overcome whatever questions are asked of it, to the extent that it can't really engage in conversation. Something that is true in the books is that every time you accept a dark gift, it also comes with a curse that can only be removed by deific interference, like the most powerful 9th level magic. You cannot just get rid of it with remove curse, which is a 3rd level spell. Something that they say is that each gift can only be received by every creature one time. You can't double dip into it. And the big kicker of it is that if you accept a gift, you must succeed at a DC 12 charisma save or simply become evil if you are not already evil.
Hey, great, awesome.
Yeah.
Super great.
And it's really weird how they phrase this, because they say, I'm not going to look up the exact wording, but I think I can remember it very closely. They say, this creature becomes evil, and now you as the DM should take control of them. Or you could allow the player to continue to play the evil version of their character. And I'm like, okay, yeah, those are the two options, I guess.
Yeah. Find a new person, get a new player to play them.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what you thought you were elaborating on to say it that way. This is something in general that I really don't like, is for there to be this kind of non-diegetic switch. There are places where I feel like it's appropriate, like if you have really truly lost control of your character, like if you've been possessed by something or something else is taking control of your body in a really irrevocable way, then I might just take control of your character and say, basically, you're out of this campaign. I'm sorry, make a new one. But for it to just be like a punishment for this kind of a decision, because ostensibly if you're accepting this gift, it's because you want some kind of cursed power. Maybe it, another worse scenario might be that if you're just trusting enough or not circumspect enough that you'll be like, yeah, I'll take a dark gift. What's the worst that could happen? And then you're like, all right, well, I'm taking your character away. That's the worst that could happen. That just feels really bad. That feels like you're being punished for like making a mistake that you are much more likely to make if you're like not metagaming. And you're like leaning into a character, or if you're new to the game. So it's not a position I particularly wanted anybody to be in, but there's a lot of content in these dark gifts. There's like fucking like 30 of them or some shit, and they're all got these unique abilities and lore behind them. So I really did want to try as much as I could to make them seem like something characters would want, or to make it a viable choice. I will say at this point...
Literally, I was offered the ability to bring back the dead, and she was like, cool, I can already do that. And
well, there are,
might have been a misinterpretation between raise dead and animate dead.
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, specific to that one, something that it didn't tell you because it did not tell you the specific benefits, it does mean the spell raise dead, and it means that you can cast it 3 times. You do still need to have diamonds for it, but that is not a spell that Nyx could normally cast. You could animate the dead.
I think as a character, she was like, cool,
yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not going to look any further into this.
Absolutely, it's fine if a character hears of one gift and isn't interested. I just really wanted to try to create as much of a scenario as I could that maybe somebody would be interested. And so the 2 ways to try to do that would be, a big one would be that this was a reason for me not letting you guys, like, do higher ability score investment. Like, I had a choice in character creation to remove a cap on ability scores where somebody could really like max out their dex if they were going to be a dex character or something like that. And I specifically said no. And a big part of what I was thinking about is I was like, I actually kind of want the characters to feel underpowered, in the hopes that when we get to this, because this is a big like penultimate turning point of this game, that maybe they'll have been struggling so much that they'll go, maybe we do want to let a little bit of a curse into our lives, if actually these gifts are tasty enough and powerful enough to turn the tide. And there's a wide spectrum. Some of them are utility, and some of them are more power, and some of them are just kind of bad and really not good deals. But definitely with this, because of this last bullet point in particular, I was like, this just makes it a bad deal for everybody, no matter who you are. Really likely that even a character who's good at charisma saves could just fail it, and your character is just gone, which would feel super shitty. So I did a little bit of rework. I didn't want to completely overhaul it, but the adjustments that I made were these: that each of the dark gods would try to pitch things as vaguely as possible, but when we got to the point with Prime specifically where they were coming back and really pushing for details, eventually they could coax some of those details out. So for Prime at least, they were able to get some of the more specific mechanics. Also, for some of them, I was like, I don't know how I would describe this in a way that would sound appealing. Peregrine communed with one sarcophagi who is like the 9-eyed spider. And I'm like, I don't even know what vague thing I would say. The gift is that you can spider climb, which again, Peregrine was like, I can already cast spider climb, and then let go, and never found out that it was just permanent spider climb that did not have to be cast, was just a permanent, constant passive benefit.
I kind of assumed it was better than just casting it, but like, she's just like, I know that there's a cat.
Alan, the thing about these dark gifts is that they kind of suck.
Yeah.
Well, most of them just like let you do a spell that like some other caster can do, and you're just like, eh. Like they're like, raise the dead. I'm like, we already got the abbot to work with. It's like,
and they're even worse in the fact that they still are going to carry this curse side effect. I didn't have any intention to change any of those, and absolutely, I'm not letting you get rid of them for anything lower than Wish. I do want that to carry on as it is, because a lot of the interest is in all the kooky side effects you can get. They are really great, and I'm not going to run through them all, but when I give the book to you, I fully recommend. I think I also do have a list somewhere that I'll try to make available that you just read through and see all the kooky shit that they do. Was there a question in there?
I should say. Oh,
Duncan first.
Oh, okay.
I'll just read what the spider one side effect was later. It's fine.
Okay.
I assumed she would become a hideous spider, but anyway.
So we
The gods themselves did not tell us those specific mechanics.
Well, we'll talk about
later that got us those specific mechanics.
We'll talk about that, but there were a couple of places where I did like you. I remember you did talk to one guy who was like, "I'll let you summon hellhounds."
Yeah,
which is like more than the book says they should say. So already before you did that thing, I was starting to bleed into this more than I originally intended to.
That's something that like happened was that like maybe there were some of these dark gods that were more like a man that summons dogs is more like able to communicate than just like a spider lord.
Yeah.
You're like,
I mean, with
take my gift, please.
I mean, with a lot of with a lot of these, I was like, how actually could I be vague about this? Because with the Hellhound guy, I could have been like, I'll give you the power to conjure fiendish dogs. like what do I say? Like at some point, it's just say what you do. The power to raise the dead is a place where I can be a little more vague because you're like, is that anime dead? Is it raised dead? Are you giving me the diamond? Like, there's a little more space to work with. But with some of them, I was like,
that one specifically feels like a monkey's paw.
Yeah. With others,
I raise the dead. Oh no, I have a horrible zombie instead of my loved one.
Another thing, I mean, you make a good point that a lot of the dark gifts are underpowered, but the thing is that you can take a lot of them. You're not restrained to just taking one. And additionally, when it came time to learn more about these, I offered up to, so whereas the book says you can only get each one once, I was like, if you want to come back and refresh it again, then you can do that. You've already taken the permanent curse, so why not just live in the Amber Temple and be a guy who... because a lot of them are like passive benefits that stick around, and others are like you can cast Lightning Bolt 3 times ever, and then they're gone. Which is like not a great thing to like suddenly be like, all right, I cast Lightning Bolt again, and I'm like, you can't. That's gone forever. Like, these are all definitely designed to be kind of fuck you things, and I was like, cool, I can see what you're going for. I actually would super like it if people took like one of these. So if I can make that a better experience, then I'll try. Like, you're still definitely going to be cursed, but try to offer it up a little bit. But I did want to keep this idea. I didn't want to turn you evil, but I did want it to feel like there was some deeper price to be paid from this. So what I worked out was that you would, instead of immediately having all autonomy wrested from you, it would be a slow slide, which I felt would be more interesting to roleplay too, and give you room where if you wanted to take a gift in the hopes that you could make it long enough to beat Strahd with that power, maybe you could do that. But in your epilogue, definitely eventually you are going to succumb to this. And I didn't want it to be just that you would turn evil, but my plan was for whatever character accepted something, I would talk to them and be like, hey, what does madness look like for your character? Let's examine the obsessions and the desires of your character. And like, if we were going to choose one of these to become a tragic flaw and really run away from you, what would that look like? And my plan was that I think I had a 3 strikes counter on this, where if you failed 3 of these DC 12 wisdom saves, you make 1 per day, then you would like slide into a place where it's like really unrecoverably bad. And this would encourage you to try to rush your way through the rest of the campaign with the hopes that at the end of it, maybe there's a way to get rid of this, or maybe you would accept whatever consequence because you've beaten Strahd, you've freed the land, and whatever happens to you afterward is not as important as accomplishing that. So this is something Prime does discover because they do decide at the end of this dungeon that they are going to have Van Richten cast Greater Restoration in Exathanter and restore his memories. Sparky, what were you about to say?
I was going to talk about the Gark gifts, but...
Well, we can continue to do that because that's kind of what this moment is about. So this is the point where I'm not going to talk about all the ramifications that come of this moment, but what is revealed at this time is that as Exathanter returns to his faculties, his kind of tomfooleryishness goes away. Immediately before this moment, the party kind of comes in to see him, and that one witch that got away is with him, and he's saying, like, so it's agreed, you will help me look after this place, and in exchange, I will take you on as my apprentice, and verse you in some lore of the Ember Temple. And she's like, yes, and they shake hands on it, and she is killed instantly for making physical contact with him, and he goes, oh, damn it. And that was the moment where Sparky goes, man, I've really become inured to death over the course of this campaign. So I'll always treasure that in my heart. But so this aspect of Exothanter is gone, and he becomes a much more serious version of himself. And we sense he is much more aware of all the characters and of this entire environment. But he is extremely grateful to the party for returning his senses to him. He is immediately extremely contemptuous of his amnesiac self, and regretful of all the ways in which he has let the Amber Temple go during that time. He is meant to be its last curator, and has not been fulfilling his duties, which he can now resume now that the party has returned his faculties to him. He is grateful to them, and will, insofar as it does not directly or seriously violate his oath to safeguard the secrets of this place, assist them in their exploration of it. He is able to...
really brave.
He is able to remember the passwords to open the books in the library. He is able to remember the names of all the vestiges and what they did.
Really cool, huh?
Oh, wow.
Mean pantses.
We did take we were sitting there like, is he just gonna like remember that he's, a really dangerous lich and just smash us to little pieces? I believe when we did this, we did it in such a way that we weren't all like in immediate fireball range.
Yeah.
It's also true that he would have been much less dangerous had you fought him right then than after a long rest, because he did not have his full repertoire of spells prepared at this time. It would take him one day at least to prepare, for example, his 9th level spells again.
Yeah. We also had Action, Jack, and Rictavio, who were like, okay, best case scenario, we fix this guy, and now he's back to being a fucking evil lich? Okay, maybe he could tell us some things, but, what the fuck is he gonna, the potential danger that he could pose is just way outweighs. We got the Sun Sword. Maybe let's just go kill Strahd. I don't know, why would we need this guy?
I think that at that point we had also determined that one of the gods had escaped. We knew there was a broken one, and we tried to sort of broach it with him, and when he was amnesiac, he went down. I was like, oh, that's bad, but I have no idea who it was, and I don't really know if that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so we kind of
remember a really specific line that came from that is we were like, yeah, one of them is gone, and he was like, no, that's impossible. If a dark god had escaped, then all the world would be shrouded in darkness and gloom, and everything would be terrible.
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, well, maybe we can convince him that, Strahd, maybe we can convince him to sort of, investigate and be a part of the dealing with, the dark god. I think that we're actually starting to wonder if, Strahd was himself a victim.
Oh, yeah.
We knew he'd gone the vampire route, but if we maybe, the trap of Barovia was something outside of his doing, and maybe... And actually, we also, at that point, immediately after, found out about Gadsky. And we're like, oh, well, it's obviously him, and he's a puppet master, and this is all his fault.
So, it's, so something that we're going to talk about here is we're going to talk about, at this point, we're going to have to talk about what Alpha eventually did with all of this. And I'm going to say for now, as kind of is obvious from this conversation, that Alpha at no point restores Exothanter's memories. They will return to the Amber Temple. We will explore these threads more later, but their relationship with this information and the points at which they learn certain things are going to be vastly different from Prime from this point onward.
Yeah, fuck that guy. He's a lich. Fuck him.
For Prime, we are very interested in this idea of the escaped vestige. We know from our book which vestiges are in which vaults. It like lists the vaults and which vestiges are within them. Because we have talked with other vestiges in the vault where one of them is shattered, then we know which vault that is, because the Incants of Exathanter tells us. And something that happens with all of this is at some point, Alpha says something along the lines of, well, obviously the vestige that has escaped is vampire. It's listed here. Strahd is a vampire. Like, it just makes sense. But if we compare the sarcophagi, the vestiges that are in there, where the shattered one is, we know which vault that is, and we know, in fact, the vampire is in a different vault. And vampire is, in fact, the vestige that Viktor Volakovich has communed with while no one was watching him. Which, if we had ever questioned him, perhaps could have come out.
That's just bad writing. We're right.
From this, they look and they go, okay, we've communed with the other vestiges in the vault with the shattered sarcophagus, so we've deduced from the Incants of Exathanter that the escaped vestige is named Gadsky the Puppet Master. They pretty quickly form a theory around that particular name, and Exathanter confirms for them. He's able to look at it with his memories restored and say, yes, that is the vestige who is missing now, and describes this old ancient god as being a trickster, the sort of creature that would toy with mortals within their dominion for their own cruel amusement. And they begin to
Did you really say toy? Were you like, really?
I very well may have done, because the party begins to suspect at this stage that perhaps there is more to their friend in Vallaki, Gadolf Blinsky, than immediately met the eye. It seems at times to make more sense than at others, but it's not an idea that we're easily able to shake from our heads. And when Prime leaves the Amber Temple, this is one of the foremost thoughts in their heads.
Oh, I don't know if you have any slides about this, but another important thing that happened in the Amber Temple for us is that we explored some random room and found a certain body in there.
Yeah, that's true. I had even forgotten to make a slide for it because it was such a footnote in Prime's campaign that they walk into a room that seemingly had been visited by the Flame Skulls at some point. And to pull back the curtain on this, this character was alive when you guys reached the Amber Temple. And at a certain point, you rested and did other stuff for so long while he was one room away from all these Flame Skulls that I was like, you know what? We've moved past the point where I care about this, and enough time has passed. He had a battle with them fully while you guys were like off in the back room somewhere and unable to hear it. And you did, when you found his body, like determine that he was so freshly dead that must be the case. And I remember you being angry at me back then. Viktor Volakovich, slain by the Flame Skulls of the Amber Temple, dead in the Prime campaign. The last time they interacted with him was way back in Vallaki. They had not seen him since. But the same in both campaigns. Since he survived that, his dreams summoned him to the Amber Temple in search of power. He discovered here, much as he did in Alpha, a staff, which I early on made sure to describe him every time as having used, and I made sure to describe that he used it to create a wall of ice. And then I think I forgot mentioning it, and we just generally forgot about it. But in Prime...
I didn't forget about the staff, but you removed him in a cutscene.
Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, you had unfortunately only had countless opportunities to do something about it before then. But Prime takes it off his corpse here, which is how Shava becomes the wielder of a Staff of Frost, which allows her to cast spells such as Wall of Ice or Cone of Cold. Not something that he had with him before he arrived at the Amber Temple, but something he discovered here. I'll admit...
Really?
Yes. I'll admit that to some degree, Victor is inspired by a different character whom I removed from this campaign. I didn't even bother to make a slide out of him because I care for him so little. In the Amber Temple, you're supposed to find fully the bodies of, I think, 2 different dead wizards who were just slain here long ago and get treasures from them. And then also you find his craven apprentice hiding out here who's just kind of a shithead. And Victor was alive and still kind of a plot point in both groups, so I just replaced Shithead Apprentice with Victor and had him come to the Amber Temple and find the staff that he's supposed to have. Victor is also, well, not Victor, but this other character in the book is supposed to have already found the amulet for the Shield Guardian, but has not found the Shield Guardian, so it's something you can play with there, that I decided instead to give that to Irina in Alpha, and didn't do anything with it in Prime, because we were trying to move things along. So, Victor is dead. We have a staff. Also, when Prime is leaving the Amber Temple, Dr. Flint is very proudly striding out with his Shield Guardian behind him when he suddenly realizes that the Shield Guardian has not followed him out the door. He turns around and pleads with him, but the Shield Guardian doesn't seem interested or perhaps even capable of leaving the Amber Temple. It kneels before him and says, "I stay, you go, no following."
No.
No.
That's
and we never see this creature again.
Bullshit. What the fuck?
I like the parallel arcs of Nyx going to such great lengths to acquire Ezek Strasny's clothing and then immediately watching him get shredded in front of the whole town, to Dr. Flint finding the Shield Guardian at the very end of the only dungeon in which it could be helpful. Too late for it to make any difference whatsoever.
Awful.
Yeah.
We did also have the moment where we're like, well, this is great. Like, Irina has this shield golem now, and that's going to keep her safe, probably, a little bit, from Strahd. No? Okay, great. Never mind. Forget that, I guess.
Yeah. Also, unable to follow Irina from the Amber Temple. Yeah. So, both games left behind. But, yeah.
Also, was very close to taking the Hellhound Dark Gift.
Yeah, so in Prime, this was the worst part of having Exithanter's memories returned, is that I had to go through and catalog all of the Dark Gifts and what they did. And I mean, I didn't have to, right? But at this point, I'm like, okay, we've made this leap. We've restored the Lich's memories. We're really trying to find out more about these creatures. It seems like Exithanter as a curator would have more information, and I really want somebody to take like one gift just for the hell of it. Come on, can we get anybody to take one? So Prime,
no, it's a terrible deal.
Prime,
well, you did this thing where you made it so you would inevitably go mad.
Well, that I figured that's better than
save or turn evil, because then I could just succeed the save and no problem.
No, I was not. I was, as a dungeon master, absolutely was never going to invite that possibility.
I understand what you mean, Alan.
Yeah. I don't care what you guys are willing to take on yourselves. The work and the grief it would have meant for me was not something I would have ever considered at any point. And also, again, you guys would have never known you were doing that the way it's written in the book.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
So you would have possibly just continued to pick up gifts until suddenly you were evil and you were gone from the campaign.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Sean was just sitting off to the side like, I've got one dark bargain already. That's like the entirety of my power. I don't want to know what my patron would do if I did this.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, like, certainly, like, with no information, like, only, like, you know, like a clown player, which there are plenty of, would accept one of these dark gifts. Like, a serious player would never do it without knowing anything about them. So the first step for there being any chance of one of us taking one is telling us what they do, and what the curse is.
Well, one of the things that we ran into was that Nyx was a necromancer, and so like shit was whispering to her to like take stuff or something, and just the entire time I feel like Nyx was the one that was like potentially going to take something, and like at this point in the game, Lucian had just had such a bad time that he didn't want to touch anything. And like I don't, correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
that is correct.
Yeah.
I was thinking something similar where it's like, if for some reason we had encountered this place earlier on, which wouldn't have worked level-wise, but if we had, like, I think Peregrine would have been more interested to at least learn more from her kind of maniacal, let's just see, kind of curiosity sort of thing. But, like, at this point, like, she and kind of the vibe of the party, we were just, like, travel weary. We were so, like, everything here sucks. Clearly, taking any of these deals will suck so much harder than any of the things we could get from it, even if it does sound cool. So, like, we got the Sun Sword. Let's just, like, let's boogie. You know, we got some really good stuff here.
It did my soul a lot of good to just be like, hey, we're not going to do any dark gifts, right? And you guys are like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no.
Because we were chasing Dr. Flint around, be like, no, don't do it, please don't do it.
That's the thing is, honestly, I'm still salty about the dark gift. Like, I don't like how they designed them. Like, how could they put so much interesting content in here and make them so cool and, like, interesting, and then just make them make it a terrible idea to take one?
That was kind of my feeling too. And the trouble is that there are so many of them and they are so good that if you could reasonably game your way through them, you would be super powerful. Like if you knew what they did, if you knew what all the drawbacks were, and you had a way to deal with them, you could walk into Castle Ravenloft. You would not walk into Castle Ravenloft. You would fly into Castle Ravenloft on bone wings, shooting lightning bolts out of your ass and throwing disease damage at people. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, some of them increase your hit points. Some of them, they give you a lot of different things. And, like, if you would all come in there with all those benefits and a way to get through them, like, that would have been really game-breaking. I was hoping to create a situation where maybe you'd get, like, 1 or 2 or 3, but only if you were feeling, like, really desperate. Like, Strahd is such a hill to climb. Like, his whole situation is so dark and so devastating that it is worth it to accept maybe even a greater evil in the hopes of destroying him and saving Irina or anything like that. But I agree with everything that you guys have said. I think that I am glad that I did any diligence at all trying to make this more compelling, but like they put in a lot of content here for what a bad idea it is and how obviously it's a trap. And the kind of trap that punishes you for, like, doing something interesting, which is the worst part. Like, it would be way more interesting if somebody decided to make the character decision to accept a gift, and they would only be punished for it. In the end, I think you guys made the right decision.
Something else that really came up for us. Something that came up for us is that, like, so we went to the temple to save Irina, but we also, like, were aware of the card that said that we would find a blade of sunlight in a temple of a faceless god, right? So like really early on in this temple, I was like, as soon as I saw the Arcanoloth inside the head of the thing, I was like 75% sure that he was guarding the Sun Sword. And so for us, our mission to the temple was, number 1, to save Irina, but, like, then we got the Sun Sword. And, like, so I was like, that's the reason why we came here. And that's what's going to, like, that was, like, kind of like a win condition to beat Strahd. And so the concept of saving our girl, telling her not to fuck herself up with these gifts, and also getting the radiant damage sword, I was like, why the fuck would any of us even consider these gifts? Like, let's get our shit, get out of here, and go kick some ass, you know?
Ooh, the one last thing I'll say about dark gifts was how funny I thought it would be to take Delbin's dark gift, which lets you cast Cone of Cold 7 times, but makes you frightened of fire.
Amazing.
Myself being...
Just not move any closer to yourself.
Yeah, you're just constantly running away from yourself forever.
You're at disadvantage for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
constantly launching just like throwing your sword away when you put it on fire. Like, throw it away.
Yeah. I personally like the one where you have to eat grave dirt every day or die.
What the fuck? I need to read these. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just, and honestly, that's part of it. Is that the debuffs there's like a chance that the debuffs are just like, your life is ruined, or another debuff is that you look ugly, and I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Cast Finger of Death 3 times. Blood turns pitch black like tar. Are you fucking kidding me? That's like one of the best ones, and one of the least important debuffs.
Yeah.
There's like a ton of those that I think, unless I haven't seen any of them, but it sounds like there's a ton of those that Action Jack would have immediately taken, no question, because I'm already like half a walking corpse. I don't give a fuck. And it's just like, this will make you like look like a corpse. I'm like, whatever, I'll take it. Like, who cares?
My guess at what they were kind of going to emulate here and sort of make it a dark version of that is that there's this old D&D artifact called the Deck of Many Things, which is a deck of cards where some of them, if you draw the card, it confers a massive benefit. Like maybe you just level up from drawing a card. Maybe you get 3 wishes as per the 9th level spell. Others, like, imprison you forever in the center of the earth. Or summon a devil whose only goal in life is to destroy you. And these are kind of like that, where as long as you're vague enough with them, they would feel like a randomized grab bag of like, some of these are just bad, others are kind of okay, or actually really good. But it doesn't really work in the same format, and especially if they just make you evil or like make you crazy or something.
Yeah, not the same format, because in the Deck of Many Things you say, okay, I'm like actively choosing to totally take my fate in my life in fate's hands, because this could be an amazing benefit, this could be nothing, this could be fucking kill me. Right?
Yeah.
And this, it's like a god is going to give you something for worshiping it, and there will be a slight curse, and I'm like, that's a great idea. And then it's like, your power is that you can shoot 3 total lightning bolts for the rest of your life, and you look like a corpse for just like the payoff, and you have no idea what the possibilities are. It's like, it's too much.
Yeah.
Hey, Alan, is there a lore reason for why the gods are doing this?
Yeah, and it's everything that kind of has been said, is that, yes, these are the vestiges of evil gods, and it's kind of left ambiguous whether they're like still meaningfully alive, most of them.
Yeah.
And what they want more than anything is to feel the same power they once had out in the world, where they had worshippers and they were feared and awed, and they still want to maintain this relationship where they like give you this power and you go and act it out in the world. They can't really help it that it like fucks you up. They are just so evil.
That's what I was getting.
Yeah, they are not consciously like doing that to you. There is no part of them that could choose to like not do it, and it's not their end game to screw you. They just want to give you this power, and it comes stained with so much corruption that it unravels you just by having it within your being.
Okay, cool.
And then also they're like stuck and contained to a degree that they like can't like communicate everything perfectly. Yeah. So and they would, not tell you about the bad parts if they could, because they really want you to take it, but there's not enough of them left to like con you into it or manipulate you. Any kind of intuition or insight that would make them capable of that is gone at this point, so they can't really make too much of a case.
Is anyone in the group able to actually shatter the other sarcophagi?
So this is something that I'll go ahead and say, in the book, they give me really conflicting information about it, because they're like, yes, these evil gods are like imprisoned in here and can never escape. Here's their armor class and their hit points. And if you break one, then like you decide what happens.
Oh my god.
And I was like, nope, they're invulnerable.
Sure. Yeah, fucking obviously, what the fuck?
Yeah, they do a lot of stuff like this, and I'll talk more about that later on, but that's a good question.
The alternate reality, we would go to the Amber Temple and we're like, yeah, we'll use these we'll save these dark gods and use them to defeat Strahd, and we just blow up all the sarcophagi and they all come back to life and Armageddon.
Importantly, even though they are imprisoned and even though they are just vestiges, over time their influence has filled the whole Amber Temple and kind of creeped out into Barovia. So the fact that, like, Victor, for example, was having dreams about this place is because they were calling out to minds like his and like Nyx's, like that they had that connection with through necromancy or dark magic, to try to establish a foothold and tempt these creatures to come to the temple. That's the reason Casimir is here as well, is because of dreams he has had of this place. He's been beckoned here by a force that in the book they call the Dark Powers. So they do still have some collective agency, in kind of the same way that, like, the Mists have a collective sentience and agency, where they're capable of some things, but in a very limited way. So we're at 9:40. I want to get through one more little bit here, because there's kind of a good launching off point a little bit up here. I definitely want to talk more about the Dark Gifts, and I also want to support everything you guys have said. This was a very troubling time for me, because there were so many things about the Dark Gifts that I liked, but also the whole implementation of them was, like, very obviously cursed and, like, not something that I ever really thought would work. And I was super unsteady about how to do it, but obviously it has such a presence in this dungeon too that I couldn't just take it out. So I appreciate the trials everybody went through making their decisions around this. I fully support everybody's decision not to take one. In my interest as a storyteller, I of course did, but as a friend, I would have absolutely advised you to fucking not do that. So well done everybody on not accepting them. Everybody leaving the Amber Temple finds that waiting for them outside is Strahd's black carriage with his black horses. It carries a letter from him inviting the party to dinner, with the promise that if they ride in the carriage, they will have safe passage to his castle. At this point in Prime, we have a number of companions lined up. Thankfully, we have other wagons with us, because we definitely never did something so crazy as blowing up Esmeralda's wagon for a fleeting combat advantage.
Look, we didn't have a wagon. We left the wagon at the bottom of the hill. We don't have the wagon.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Well, somehow we're able to all clown car in here. And with this group of super duper heroes, we rattle off down the hill. Alpha has a similar decision where we have this party that is trying to make their way down. Our gladiator has not quite left us yet. She'll leave us at Salenka Pass. And they look at this carriage and they go, nope, that's a trap. Not only do they walk all the way down the mountain, they put a stone-shaped boot on the carriage so that it cannot follow them. And the horses laboriously through the snow try their best to follow the party with this stone slab on the wagon wheels. And we almost...
Luke put the boot on the wagon.
Yeah, and nobody stopped him, so we...
Oh, yeah.
And you guys laborious...
We had, at this point, we had all learned not to stop him.
We don't trust you, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they... So while Prime has a very easy and comfortable and fast ride down the mountain in their Strahd carriage with nothing attacking them, Alpha will travel on foot all the way to the castle and fight for their lives against many things.
Okay. We absolutely did get attacked.
You absolutely did get attacked. That is true, but not by Strahd's minions. So the first one of these that happens...
Using every possible instance to clown on us. This is not what I signed up for.
I'm sorry. Just, you guys are so clownable. I'm so sorry.
We were resigned to the being clowned upon at this point. We're just like, whatever.
I wonder who his favorite group to work with was. Jesus.
I love all of my players equally.
The third group that's having sex with all the definitely his favorite.
I will neither confirm nor deny. This is the start of both parties' journeys into the end game. We're leveling up to level 9 at this point, and our final destination from here on is Castle Ravenloft. It's 9:45. Are we at the point where people need to knock off? I have other, like, kind of short bits I could clip through if we're willing to stay like another 10 minutes, or if people need to sign off now, this is a good stopping point.
I probably gotta go.
All right.